Well, thank you, Joanne. If you don't mind, I don't know if you want to just allow me to go down the agenda, or if there was any initial announcements that you wanted to make with regards to the committee or anyone else on the call. I think all of us on this call know each other.
Mhm.
Um, and I'll just continue to allow people to come in as they need to. Um,
I have no announcements, Ken, so if you want to just go ahead.
okay, so what I'm going to do is share a screen. Oops. Okay. Can you see that?
Yes.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. So this meeting actually is like, I think we can probably consider this a transition point based on the fact that we've had the community survey, we've had our focus groups, we've had the visioning session. We continue to learn more about the community from these committee meetings, as well as conversations with you, with the town administrator, um, and with others in the community. So, you know, our content specialists, Andy, Ted, Patty, Shannon, myself, Catherine, as well as our engagement consultant, Baird Planning Group, and Fiona and Alexis on that team, you know, continue to remain, you know, connected to your community, albeit virtually, to understand some of the issues. And I think this presentation is meant to identify some of the issues we found. However, I'm sure that there will be some additional conversation that will be had today, to either add to it, maybe not draw too much attention to it. However, know that with this comes a draft that will be coming to you later today, that will have most of the components of the master plan, as well as summaries of the engagement to this point. Um, with that said, I think when we get to next steps, we'll figure out our process for which, you know, we collect information from you, whether or not we have additional conversations and calls from you. We're here to amend this as much as we can, just so that it is reflects the community. Um, okay. So we're going to talk about today the community survey, focus group takeaways, visioning, and then the issues and opportunities, which is a section of the master plan that of each element of each section. So housing, economic development, land use, that I think we've gathered based on the conversations that our content specialists have proposed areas where we can build upon, and that feeds into the strategies for implementation of some of the ideas that we may have. Okay, just letting people in. Oops. Catherine, I'm going to make you co-host just in case, because I don't. So you can let people in as you see them.
Great, thank you.
So for the presentation for today is the community survey results, as I mentioned, focus group takeaways, vision statement, and then the issues and opportunities. And then we'll have a small discussion at the end with regards to goals and strategies. And we have the content specialists also here that may be able to address any questions or ideas you may have. But know that we're taking notes. And because this is our kind of initial stab with identifying these and putting them down as things that we're going to be building off of, I think that's just an important first step. So as you are aware, the survey period was mid-January to February 15th, 2021 of this year. We had 170 respondents, and that, comes from that comes from both the online survey engagement, which was through Survey Gizmo, as well as the paper survey that we sent to 650 households in Blandford. And from those, 140 paper copies had to be input into the system. So we had our other intern, who is not on this call, Taryn, who input those survey results.
Hey, Ken, I just
yeah.
wanted to interject for a minute. Our regional representative from the Executive Office of Energy and Environmental Affairs has joined us, Carrie Ann Petrick. So welcome, Carrie Ann, to the meeting. And at some point, everybody will be able to see you. We won't be screen sharing.
Yeah.
Unless. Thanks for being here.
Yeah, welcome, Carrie Ann.
Sorry, I'm a little late.
So with regards to the questions that we asked to identify the respondents, we have the length of residency, if you were a homeowner, renter, or household member, gender identity, and the description of household. If you recall, it was asking if you were responding to this as a self, a couple, if in your household, you had children or adult children, or multi-generational. So this was the first question. Choose the top 3 reasons why you live in Blandford. And I think, you probably all are aware of the reasons why you chose Blandford to live in. And I think the sentiment is shared with the people that filled out the survey, as well as in the focus groups that we had last week or 2 weeks ago, and the visioning session. And that small town atmosphere and open space and low crime rate, which usually is equated with those various things. Additionally, looking at the free response answers, there were a lot of responses with regards to privacy. There were a couple regarding inherited homes. So people had inherited these homes because their family members allowed them to have it. And then low taxes, which is interesting because I'm sure that there's been sentiment regarding the other conversation that taxes may be too high with regards to the services provided. But
Hey, Ken, sorry to interrupt again, but there's somebody in the waiting room, iPhone 407764. Does anybody know? Does that seem familiar to anybody? I'm not sure if I should admit them because of Zoom bombing. Does anybody know iPhone 407764? It's not a number that we can identify.
Just let them in. If it's a Zoom bomb, kick them out.
All right, thank you.
Okay.
iPhone 407764, can you tell us who you are? Hi, whoever came in on their iPhone, could you tell us who you are, please?
Hi, it's Mary.
Mary.
Mary, thank
The
you.
link wouldn't work in the agenda on my other apparatus, so I'm in on the iPhone and I have another meeting at 4:30.
Thanks very
So,
much. Thank you.
I'm so sorry. I don't know what happened. Anyway.
Thanks for being here.
Thanks, Mary. Okay. Housing. So some of the next couple of slides, obviously there were a lot more questions than the ones that I'm going to share with you. There is going to be a summary of this in the plan document, as well as the town does have the survey results in kind of its raw form. Do you believe there's enough housing for Blandford seniors of varying incomes and abilities? Almost 59% said no. And I think that was probably a sentiment that was shared in various focus groups, as well as in the visioning session, with regards to ideas that the town may be exploring to allow for this or continue expanding this notion that because the population of seniors over the age of 65 is now 25% of today's population, it yeah, it is a concern of those who filled out this survey, and we didn't in this survey ask for age. That was the committee decided that that wasn't necessary for this survey exercise. So we don't know who responded to this, but if the sentiment is that there isn't enough housing for Blandford seniors of varying incomes and abilities, then that's probably something we should be mindful of and address in the plan. I bet, you know, looking at this particular slide, you probably would agree with this. It came out in many of the various focus groups with regards to single family homes. You know, you don't see anything other than that. However, you know, there senior housing, you'll see, is the next number that received a lot more responses, at about 42%. That's the town promoting that. There were some neat, there was a neat link within the survey that showed some examples of senior housing in other hill towns, in Goshen, through the Hilltown CDC. So that's something that, you know, if the town may want to explore, either a senior zoning bylaw, a senior overlay, or, you know, to adopt this idea that, you know, seniors need specific type of housing, to see if the town regulations would allow for that. But at the same time, single family homes, that's typical in Blandford, and it will be continuing in that way because the regulations suggest so. Land use. So the second question of the survey, if you look to the left of the screen, is choose the top 5 land uses you view as important. And, you know, I think understanding that the town loves its rural character, forests and wildlife, working farms and farm stands, and water quality and resources, open space for scenic value, and spaces for recreational use, all make sense. And all confirm the thought that the community wants to remain this type of community. And I know that in drafting this chapter, there are some suggestions that are going to be recommended with regards to zoning regulations that could be explored to continue and maintaining these various things that you find important. With that said, if you look to the right side of the screen as well, you can see that what is supported and what is not. And obviously, zoning to protect agricultural lands, which the town does have an agricultural zone. However, that probably could be expanded, as well as some of the review of the overlay districts of that you have in town. The other top 2 strong support is for the continuing to educate landowners about options for permanently protecting land and preserving Blandford's open spaces in perpetuity, and creating new active recreational resources such as horseback riding trails, etc. And so obviously that plays in tune with the other community process that's going on in town, which is the open space plan. And I'm sure that a lot of these various values with regards to retaining open space and maintaining them will align in both plans. If you look at the strongly oppose, it goes, you know, hand in hand with the thought that the community likes the single family homes, the single family home products. So it would make sense that, you know, 76% of the respondents said that, you know, they would oppose zoning for high density residential development. You know, I think of interest too is the clustered home development zoning bylaw. That's an interesting concept, especially with regards to subdivision development. You know, and I'm probably going to be hearing a lot more of this, or there may be some refinement of the way that this has been presented in my particular chapter, is that, this failed at town meeting in the past. However, I think this is an important tool to preserve your open space amenities and some of the recreational amenities that the town provides to the community. And so, is it worthwhile exploring that again? Possibly, but I guess as you review the plan, we'll have that conversation. With regards to economic development, should the town encourage new commercial development? 54% say no, 46% say yes. It's kind of split down the middle, and I think some of the free responses in the survey, as well as what was taken away from the visioning session, as well as the community, the focus groups, is that there is an opportunity to not necessarily densify, but encourage ways to promote these types of small commercial developments, or the ability to create additional amenities in the town center, considering all of the amenities you have there currently and are taking advantage of. So that's something that I just wanted to draw attention to. With that said, there are ideas that the respondents in the survey suggested that they would like to see, and recreation, musical events, restaurants. I think that there are opportunities within the current layout of the town center, and possibly utilizing some of the recreational institutions that you already have in the community, particularly the fairgrounds, that could be helpful in kind of implementing or achieving some of these ideas without necessarily addressing increased density in the town center. Open spaces and natural resources. Choose a statement that most reflects how you feel about the protection of open space in Blandford. 60% say the amount of open space currently protected is just right. And another 30% say it's not enough. And then 10% say there's too much. So I think understanding that the sentiment is open space is very important to the community, whether or not you have enough or there's not enough, there are ways that the town can maintain that and build upon that. And I think, as I mentioned in the previous slide, the alignment with the open space plan, as that will be an important tool for the town to get park grants and various grants to support some open space and recreational priorities, is going to be very important. I included this particular question on the right side of the screen with regards to identifying the various activities that people enjoy in Blandford. And, this is going to be helpful to the team that's working on the open space plan to identify those types of activities. And so, it's clear that bird nature watching and walking on roads is one of the most done activities in Blandford, because it's probably the easiest. You go in your backyard. And I recall one of the focus group, one of the residents in one of the focus groups saying that, it's kind of like all of these various wildlife in their backyard and really enjoying the, the nature. So it makes sense. And you could do that from your own, from your own home, as well as walking on roads. And there is this planning process that's going on. We'll talk a little bit about it at the end with regards to a walk audit that's going to be performed later on this spring and next month, that will help identify some additional resources, as well as infrastructure and inventory of places that residents, seniors can walk. And so, I think this particular slide on the right too is also informative in that, is looking at where people participate in these activities elsewhere, is that important to the town? Motorized boating, non-motorized boating, swimming. I know that there have been conversations either through this committee or in the focus group with regards to a swimming hole that the town may be exploring on property owned by Springfield Water. But again, in discussions, as if there's town discussion about it, or if a couple people are talking about it, I think it's important to acknowledge that and identify that in the plan. So some other takeaways, again, and this is, I think, coming from reviewing the survey results, particularly and finding where they frequently come a lot. Residents are not inclined to support multi-unit housing styles, which can address housing availability for younger families, singles, and seniors. Opportunities should be provided for small businesses to land in the Blandford Town Center. Residents really want to see more community events utilizing venues like the Town Hall Gym or White Church. Land owned by Springfield Water Department has limited access to Cobble Mountain Reservoir for Blandford residents, an amenity that was enjoyed prior to September 11th. And the nature and low population has drawn people to Blandford to live. And I think, that runs, and that's a idea that has come in all the conversations that I've been a part of, and I'm sure many of my colleagues as well. So focus group takeaways. We're going to be putting a document on the town, the project website that goes into a deeper dive, as well as has been collected by our engagement consultants with regards to individual focus groups. The focus groups are also online on our on the YouTube page or on the project website, and it's a YouTube link. So you could watch either one of the 4 focus groups that we've had so far. And, but these are the takeaways for the purposes of this presentation. Residents love the rural small town living. That can't be, repeated enough. Seniors could use additional programming and housing for aging in place. And so I know that there was discussion in multiple focus groups with regards to the ability for additional senior programming, as well as understanding that, as the population is getting older, there's going to be a need for them to have the proper type of housing, homes on one floor. If there is the possibility that they may need caretakers, or they could live on their, their child's parcel, so accessory dwelling units, understanding that there are opportunities there that the town can look at. The turnpike, and I put this with an exclamation point because it's not going away. It's not an issue that I think is going away, and I think the sentiment is also shared among the community members, as it came up as both an opportunity and the threat. Springfield Water Department, every conversation that I've had has gone to address, the needs of the town with regards to its recreational and open spaces, and the fact that Springfield Water Department is one of the largest landlords in the community.
I just want to correct it. Springfield Water and Sewer. It's not the city of Springfield. It's a completely separate entity, not the city of Springfield.
Springfield Water and Sewer. Thank you, Catherine.
Thanks.
Ability to use other town destinations as opportunities. That was something that came up. Open space and cultural resources focus group with regards to utilizing maybe the country club, maybe the ski area, possibly the fairgrounds as ways to really make those what probably is more exclusive, more inclusive to town residents. There is a reliance on volunteers, and there was a strength in that. And then one of the things that came up multiple times also was the continued dependence on the town administrator and possibly identifying ways to assist him with many of the various things he has on his plate. So that was a takeaway on the focus groups. So we're going to go to the vision statement. I know that our engagements, and so we're going to be switching gears into the discussion where we start talking about the master plan and how we've kind of set up the drafts that you'll be reviewing. And I think this is a good time to discuss the format. And so the way that we have initially looked at this is that the plan, vision, and mission, of which the next slide will show that, is the guiding principles for the document. And you have plan objectives that will tie into your land use section, the housing section, the transportation section, open space, cultural resources, sustainability, economic development. But they'll all tie into those common objectives. And with that, there will be a formulation of chapter goals, as well as chapter recommendations, and recommendations meaning ways to implement the goals and some suggestions on how to do that. And it's formulated in a way that could be helpful to the community. And the next thing, this is a rehash of the vision and mission statement that the town completed with the visioning exercise. Plan objectives. And so we wanted to draw your attention to this specifically for the understanding that I think the way that that language was initially composed created some very specific ways that we had to formulate our goals and recommendations within kind of shoehorning ourselves into those specific goals as they were initially presented, or objectives as they were initially presented. So, our idea, and this is more general than before. And this is something that you obviously will have the ability to comment on as you review this document and review our document, that if this makes sense to you, that we have the vision and mission statement that will be your call to order for the community to be acknowledged, or acknowledge that the committee and the residents have put together this vision and mission, as well as identified objectives that will help support many of the goals that are going to be present in the chapters. So that's just a comment with regards to the objectives, and I'm sure that if there are additional comments with regards to that, you will share them. So as we started to draft our chapters based on our own research of the data that's out there, the data that our data manager presented to you in the third meeting, as well as our maps, our GIS staff who also presented at that meeting, is to identify the issues and opportunities for the various elements of the plan. And so regarding land use, identifying and also taking into consideration the community survey, as well as, these committee meetings, the visioning session, and the focus groups. Some of the issues and opportunities that we've identified in land use: encouraging redevelopment in the town center and really preserving the rural features. So scenic roadway designation and public shade trees, understanding that they play an important role in a rural community, identifying the need for possibly a scenic roads bylaw, where the planning board would have the opportunity to review applications on that. Restrictions on redevelopment or development, site plan review standards, identifying criteria and standards for mostly non-residential development, um, in town, should that, happen to come to Blandford. Home occupation and cottage industries, building on the fact that you do allow them in town, based on the initial review of the bylaw. However, it's like hidden. It's hidden in the language. So identifying that and trying to really celebrate the fact that, that's an important way for both economic development and for sustainability for people that utilize home occupations and cottage industries in their homes. And then exploring, again, open space residential development, cluster housing. For transportation, complete streets was a topic that was brought up in the transportation focus group. It's identifying the various infrastructure that you have in town, and doing an assessment based on that. So I think that there is an issue, an opportunity that was taken away from some of our initial observations. Building upon the senior van service that the Council on Aging has used and is using, and understanding some of the issues that arise from offering that, and ways to expand on that's going to be an important opportunity for the town. Continued monitoring of roadways and culverts to remain in a state of good repair. Obviously, there were, in the particular chapter, there are examples of the roadway construction, and how, when using an assessment tool, how Blandford's roads relate to the measurements that are required for federal funding. So ensuring that that's the case, ensuring that your culverts are not causing an issue. And then expanding existing pedestrian network, and that's specific to a lot of the discussion about walking in town, specifically. Housing, population and growth, the community is aging. So understanding that, and trying to provide the housing types and the affordability with regards to that. Housing affordability, that came up too. Not only for seniors, but possibly everyone else. Is that something? And understanding that there are multiple things in place with regards to housing affordability. That's important to taxes being one of them. Housing choice types. It's clear based on your survey that single family homes is the majority of the development in town. And so understanding that, but also understanding that maybe to address senior housing, you look at other types of housing types. And then resilience in home construction, and that's specific to identifying construction methods that ensured resilience in the homes. Open space and natural resources, sustaining a high water quality. That was, the water quality has been celebrated. The Springfield Water and Sewer Commission, as Catherine had mentioned, is a place where there has been discussion with regards to Cobble Mountain Reservoir, and understanding the nature of those conservation restrictions, and understanding what you can and can't do, and then also trying to engage with them to get the town to have the access that it once had. Connecting wildlife and trail corridors, probably that aligns more so with open space and recreational, the open space and recreational plan, identifying those particular parcels, and doing an analysis based on that. Community resilience in the form of addressing stormwater and continued evaluations of potential impacts of climate change. And that's, the continued discussion about in your grant opportunities that the town has been exploring with MVP, specifically this particular one, but ensuring that the town continues to take advantage of that and have that as being a way to understand the issues that the town is currently facing with regards to climate change. With regards to cultural resources, historic buildings, a preservation plan and resiliency, and cultural events and opportunities, and really expanding that. I think, as you'll review the section on cultural resources, there's going to be an important role for you to play with regards to, this is not really something that is talked about in most master plans. I mean, it's a requirement. However, I think that, with regards to, I guess, conversations that may have been gleaned and some information that have been gleaned with regards to your various commissions to preserve the historical buildings and some of your cultural events and activities, just expanding that and understanding that through going through a preservation plan process could be very useful to the community. In addition to also understanding that that will be helpful for grant opportunities and to engage further with other various entities. Public services, facilities and services. I don't know why it says continued on the bottom, but with regards to that, continued delivery of public services. You obviously are trying to maintain the services you are currently providing, understanding that through the survey, there is a sentiment that maybe some services are delivering better than others. But the goal, obviously, for the town, the select board, and many of the boards and commissions is to sustain that level, and if not, expand if possible. The issues and opportunities, in addition to that, fiber optic installation, that's very important. And as the town is getting that constructed, that will open up some opportunities for the community. Water infrastructure, and this comes from alignment of issues that were identified in your two various planning processes in the past couple of years, specific to the hazard mitigation plan and the community resilience building workshop summary of findings that was specific to identifying some water infrastructure issues that could pose a problem in the future. And then building maintenance and accessibility. Again, that was identified in those two previous plans with regards to the highway department and the fire department, and maybe some acknowledgement of either it not being compatible with the current capacity of the services being provided to the town, but addressing some of the issues over there. And then that's it for this presentation. And I think, as I mentioned, I'm going to stop sharing so I can see everyone. Will be helpful and has been helpful to guide the initial draft of this, which you will be receiving. But I don't know if there are any initial questions, thoughts with regards to what was presented thus far. And I'll open it up.
Everybody can just unmute and talk. You don't have to.
One at a time there, one at a time. Oh, Ken, you must have done an excellent job here. There's no, does anybody agree with what was presented? Anything that was that popped up that might have sounded surprising, or disagree with something that was presented?
I think to your point, Josh, it's probably when they start reviewing the draft that they may come in with their red markers. So, it's probably understood that there's a lot of information that was provided here. And obviously it's a high level Although, we did delve down into some particular issues with some particular properties, with some particular, headache causers, that hopefully we've been able to identify, at least in this setting, but also in the plan that the committee will be reviewing.
I just want to say before we forget it, because we just affirmed it, that the open space and recreation plan update community meeting is going to be on Tuesday, March 30th at 6:30. And it would be fantastic if all of you could come to hear what's going into the open space and recreation plan, since that's the plan that's being updated, concurrently with you all working on the master plan, and for you all to have the opportunity to give your direct input into that planning process. So that's 6:30 on Tuesday after next, March 30th. And of course, you'll be getting emails about it, but if you want to save it in your calendars right now, that would be fantastic.
Mary.
Hi, yeah, Ken, in thinking about it, you had cluster housing
Mhm,
on there someplace,
mhm.
and the town voted against that not too many years ago.
Okay.
And I think it was during the open space meeting that somebody said even if we revisited that, the cluster housing creates the need for all kinds of additional infrastructure that we don't have, or don't have opportunities for and access to. So I wonder if that's something we want to take out, or wait and see what open space comes back with again.
I think you bring up a great point, Mary, and I think it's something that every community deals with open space and residential development differently, especially this cluster housing, assigning percentages to usually the amount of natural resources or open spaces that may be available for the town to enjoy, but also, as you mentioned, really centralize any infrastructure that may be necessary to support those homes. But I think that there are different ways to approach it, and different criteria that the town can maybe explore. And I have an idea as far as something called conservation development, which is a form of open space recreational development, which is not recreational development, residential development, which is specific to understanding that you have this centralization of your various infrastructure to support the homes, but also understanding that you're going to have minimizing roadway construction and or some of the other impacts that new housing could provide. So yeah, I mean, I think it is up to the committee as far as whether or not that would be worthwhile. I think in experiencing putting these types of plans together, I'm suggesting not necessarily adopting, and that's not the language I'm using. I love the word explore. I love the word. I love to ensure that the community does think about it, and to also think about if the town may be looking at getting a grant application or submitting a grant application, to understand that the town may have looked at that type of development, if it may assist with conforming to an idea that maximizing those types of resources in town, but also providing for the ability to develop homes.
Yeah, and that's just it, Ken. We don't have the ability, we don't have the resources to maximize.
Mhm.
I think that's the issue with the cluster housing especially. But it'll
I'd
come
like
out.
I'd like to say something, Mary.
Yeah, and Joanne
I-
also had her hand up after Judith. Go ahead.
Okay, I just feel like exploring the issue, knowing full well that it's going to have real limits, I think is important to revisit it again.
Okay.
If, you know, I don't know, I just, in talking to some of the seniors and other people in town, there has been some interest. So I don't know if those would be the people who would vote on this or not, but just to leave it as an open idea.
Okay.
Yeah, Joanne.
Ditto on Judy. This is going to be long-term, this process we're looking at. So we shouldn't just discount it today because we feel like we can't deal with it today. This might be something that's good in 5 years, 10 years, whatever. I just
Okay.
think that we should leave it on the table.
Thanks, Joanne.
That was great conversation. Are there any other issues like that that triggered thoughts or reflections from your experience in your community?
I think we could also use this time if there are PVPC staff on the call, especially if maybe during the draft process, something, was stuck in your craw with regards on how to move forward with identifying those issues. Open it up to PVPC staff if there are some, additional questions or thoughts with regards to some of the things that you've proposed.
Yes, Shannon.
I would just say, to reiterate what Joanne and Judith said, that I put some ideas on there for that purpose. I didn't want to discount any ideas so that they could be open to exploration. Yeah, that's all.
Shannon, do you want to share what those what those things that you, because I probably didn't in this review and in this presentation didn't necessarily delve deep into that, but if you'd like to share, please do.
Sure. Well, when I was first listening to everyone, I was thinking, for example, Community Preservation Act potential that might be met with resistance. But the more I listened to goals of the residents, it seemed like it actually could meet a lot of goals, but also the neat thing about that program is it allows you to control your funds locally. You have control over where the money goes, and it would meet those open space and cultural resource things that you all enjoy. So I put it in there as something to consider pursuing. And we have a great organization in the state called the Community Preservation Coalition that really helps support towns that are even, cities or towns that are even considering pursuing CPC. And they have also a publication about CPA at work in small towns that I thought was really informative. So that's one thing that I put in there. Another thing which I learned a lot about based on this process was cultural district designation. And just hearing about all the resources along Main Street and talking to the different groups and people involved with those resources, from the general store up to the fairgrounds and club area and everything in between, and all the different events and programming and outdoor potential, burial grounds and possibilities for public art, and especially being outdoors. I learned a lot about cultural district designation. I spoke with the Mass Cultural Council that helps with this program, learned about additional funding that could come into play with this type of a program, and how I just thought it was really interesting. So I put that in there as well.
Remind me again, the key things that, the key areas that CPA eligible projects would be. It's parks, historic preservation.
It's, and one of you could correct me, maybe Catherine or Ken, because you know more, but I know it's open space and recreation,
Yeah,
historic preservation, and then
and housing is number 3. Yeah.
And it's, I know in Springfield, I know the committee that worked to get it passed in Springfield, and they went into it with the approach that it wasn't going to get passed. So the way they did it was they put forth every frequently asked question up front, just to, as their outreach, just so that people would really understand what the program was. And I think it's a 1% or 3% tax surcharge. Is that what it is?
It's up to 3%.
Yeah, up to 3.
So
1,
in
2, or
Springfield,
3.
for example, they did a 1%, and they were very straightforward with how you could opt out of this if it was not going to be something that you could support with your income. And then the state matches what you're putting in. And it's my understanding that all of the municipalities in Massachusetts pay into the state fund no matter
Right.
what. So you're paying into the CPA fund. And if you don't have CPA, your money is going to the communities that do have CPA. And if you do have CPA, the money comes back to your community, and then you have whatever percentage match was voted on. So it's just, I think, an interesting thing to explore as a potential way that you could really put the money back into your own community for the things that are important to you.
I was just wanted to point out that I think you're making a very interesting point right now, understanding the results that was just presented around open space, the how the community values open space and recreation and historic preservation,
Mhm.
and CPA having a great deal of flexibility to do exactly that and support that and fund those types of projects outside of the normal taxation or the appropriation, the budget to run the town. So I think that's a very good observation right there, to really highlight.
Just to explore. So I'm glad you say that, because I was hesitant about putting it in, but the more I heard of what your goals were, it just really makes sense as something to look at. And the nice thing is you have a local a committee made up of local stakeholders who make the decision. It's not going outside of Blandford where another group is deciding on what the projects are going to be. It's all done locally. So those are the two things that made it into my chapter as potential things to consider. Looking into cultural district designation because of everything that could benefit the programs you already have, and also just considering CPA.
So
as an
cultural
option.
activities too.
Yep, cultural district designation is different. It's through the Mass Cultural Council, but that is a wonderful organization, a part of our government. And I know through the Blandford Historical Society, they were able to access major Mass Cultural Council funds to do exterior work on the White Church, but also because of the programming that goes on there. So cultural district designation, the person who runs it for the state, his first name is Louis. I apologize, I can't remember his last name, but when I said Blandford, he went right in, did a Google Earth aerial view of Main Street, was looking at all the sites because they were popping up. He said libraries are great sources of cultural programming, and which you all know how much you value the Porter Memorial Library. But I would even say the general store and all that means to the town, up to the fairgrounds, potentially the club, if depending upon how they proceed in the future, it could be a community space. So you have a lot of resources existing is what I'm saying.
We need to put a plug in for supporting the addition on the Historical Society building, which is a town building. We're running out of space to take care of our historical items, and we also need to get ourselves handicap accessible, and it's important that somehow, I think, make it into your report that the town supports it, because it's a town building that we're talking about.
Yes,
We
and
have
those two things, both CPA, because it's a historic building, that's the type of a project that would go to
I was just thinking about the Historical Society building. There's also the intention to want to expand a library building.
Mm-hmm.
There's also
up the Watson Park
barn behind Town Hall in Watson Park that has come up in previous discussions to want to do something with. And then there's Shepherd's Farm area. So I think, you got these areas here that can, I think, really benefit from CPA funds to actually get some projects going without waiting for the town, the local, without waiting for us to budget for those important items through local
right, and keeping it locally controlled, the decision-making process. So those are some things that came up in my chapter. CPA, consider CPA, cultural district designation, feasibility for the reuse of Shepherd Farm, preservation partnerships for programming, things like that.
Good job.
That's great, Shannon. You know, we're talking about CPA and the other 10%, 10% has to go to housing. So Ted was going to give a little update on the housing chapter.
Yeah, CPA sounds great. No, just kidding. So when people review the housing section, I'd love feedback on this, particularly because I was trying, and this is what I took away from all our meetings and the responses, trying to thread a needle between the obviously need for either some sort of senior housing or at least assistance or aging in place, something along those lines, or some combination of all that, along with you know, where needed, some modest growth. And that might not, I tried to keep that as a less important focus. Basically, from what I've gotten from all the discussions was that well, mostly the need for both senior housing or something along those lines, and also the services that come with it, but also the fact that they're, you know, it's harder to pull in families, and a lot of that has to do with various things that aren't housing related necessarily, like the school and whatnot. But that's kind of what the focus on mine was. So if you guys could, you know, when you're reviewing that, I'd love to get comments back on that. So that's basically, that's it in a nutshell.
So I'm looking right at my screen at Andy. I don't know if there was anything in the transportation section that, you know, to ask the committee to review with a fine tooth comb or look at, that could be helpful for you as you work on the amendments to this.
So obviously the first thing that pops to my mind is the section on the senior van service, and ensure that I first covered it accurately and how it's currently operated, and also kind of the objectives of where you'd like it to be. We could put a couple links in to some sort of examples around Western Mass that could not necessarily be used as a template, but maybe sort of just stimulate some ideas with how what we call micro transit has been applied in other semi-rural areas, and how it can tie into a larger a transit system, or at least function on a small scale. And then the kind of second thing I want to touch on, not necessarily for you to review, but when we talk about infrastructure and existing infrastructure and maintaining a you know, a state of good repair, that's slightly deceiving for Blandford, because what we figured out from going through this process is basically 50% of your roadway miles are unpaved surfaces thereabout. And so we don't necessarily do an assessment on the condition of unpaved surfaces, because it is a more stable or unstable and can change very rapidly based on a severe weather event, or obviously if you evaluate unpaved surface prior to winter, you know, once the frost comes and leaves, everything's different. So we don't really have a good tool for assessing unpaved surfaces. So when we talk about your specifically your roadway surfaces and maintaining a state of good repair, we're only looking at those paved surfaces. And also we've excluded the interstate from that evaluation, because obviously that's completely out of your control.
Thanks, Andy. Josh?
Andy, completely what?
The interstate system is, you know, is out of the control of Blandford. It's
Oh,
maintained by
okay.
its own entity, and it's out of all of our control, basically. So
Thank you.
If I can jump in,
Yeah, Josh.
I got something for Ted, and then I want to come back to Andy on transportation. But Ted, for housing, I don't know how, I mean, I haven't read it or saw any draft or anything in this subject area, but, you know, I think, you know, we recently received, and we're forever grateful for the help Pioneer Valley has helped the town in acquiring CDBG to coordinate the housing rehabilitation program. I think that's important as we try to continue to help residents, especially those who are low income and wanting to stay in place, and live safe and be safe and healthy within their homes here in their community of Blandford. So I think, if we somehow can continue to keep that as a priority in our community, to be sure that we're looking out for our most vulnerable households who are of low income, so that we're looking out for their health and safety, and being sure that they can continue to stay here in the community that they grew up in. I don't know if you talked about that at all in your housing section, but just wanted to make that point.
Yeah, no, that's good. I did include that, as well as the home modification loan program that is, a statewide program. And there's potentially other funding out there along that line of the whole aging in place, or that did come up a lot about the rehab, or at least there's a lot of old houses, obviously, as everyone knows, in Blandford, and getting those the upkeep on those is tremendous. So anything we can do along those lines. We've piloted, again, through this CDBG, more specific aging in place programs. We've done one in Agawam, and we're doing one in East Hampton this next year. And it's a more targeted, it's specifically for aging in place type stuff. So like handbars and or grab bars, stuff for railings, that kind of thing. So that's another thing to look at down the road. I mean, those are specific examples of what we can look at, but yeah, we definitely included those.
Okay, thanks. And then Andy, in transportation, I don't know if how roads are maintained and treated gets reflected in this section in particular, but I just wanted to share that in the topic of resiliency, climate resiliency, our highway super has introduced the idea in the past, and every so often we bring it up and we continue to talk about it and plan for it. And but using some sort of biodegradable treatment as an alternative to salt and sand. So I don't know if, we know that the stuff that we apply to the roads eventually goes into our area, seeps into the ground and into our reservoirs. And, so I don't know if this is something we should probably include there as a potential idea or objective or strategic priority for the community to continue to explore the idea of biodegradable solutions to treat roads.
We do not mention anything, but we can absolutely add something. The one issue I can think of is the amount of roadway miles maintained by the state. So that's going to be a second hurdle. So obviously the town of Blandford can go to a beet juice or something that's, more environmentally friendly and less impactful. I'm thinking specifically, I live on a state maintained route as well, and the state puts down lots and lots of salt.
Right.
I mean, tons of salt. And so obviously in your town, they maintain somewhere around 15 miles or something like that, a roadway, maybe not quite that much. So that's, that's a significant chunk that may be difficult to get changed. But obviously for the local roads or the roads that are maintained by Blandford, it's up to the town to do that. But we'll definitely look into adding some language on that.
Yeah, and apparently it does help. Randy's not here to explain it better than what I can, but I guess it helps our dirt roads with, what's the word they use when the dirt is disappearing behind you as you're driving through it, and it creates some sort of dusting. It helps with dusting. So I don't know. I just thought I'd make those points there, because Rainey hasn't been able to participate as much as he'd like, because it seems like every time we have these meetings, there's some weird weather event going on and some weird emergency.
Does everybody know that the state has had to purchase at least 3 homes that I'm aware of on Route 23 because of the salt that has gone into the wells, and it's also necessitated complete replumbing and extensive filtering of water on wells on Route 23 in the westerly direction and also out at the very end of Chester Road. There's an appreciable amount of salt in the well water there.
Mm.
I was not aware of that.
In this transportation section, Andy, it might be for, if there's a subgroup, but if Rainey can't make these meetings, it might be a good idea to, do some outreach and connect with them to be sure that we're incorporating his concerns, his viewpoint as he sees it, and some solutions he might have in mind.
Definitely.
Yeah, Margaret wanted to say something.
Yeah, I just wanted to add to what Mary had just brought up, that it's not just from the salt going down on Route 23, it's also coming from the turnpike. So some of these homes are getting
Right.
double whammied.
I'm just realizing, we didn't obviously send you the draft because, all the staff were wrapping them up and we knew that you wouldn't have time to read them in advance of this meeting. So, given you an overview and talked about the highlights. But what I'm realizing that Ken and I are going to do before we send you the full draft is we're going to prepare some comment sheets to make it really easy for you to jot down your first thoughts and your ideas. And then if obviously you can just send us an email, but we're going to send you some little comment sheets and maybe even a brief survey, online survey, like what we just did, where you could rank like out of what you've heard, what are your priorities? So there is so much more time for your comments. Like, don't be at all worried about there isn't going to be time for your comments. So it's March 18th. It's going to be done by June 30th. These are very much drafts. They're really white papers, they're working papers on the topics, but there's more time for us to do additional research. Like Josh just asked, we can meet with town staff. When we send the draft to you all, we'll be happy, Josh, to send it directly to any town staff that aren't serving on the committee, anybody else that needs to review it, with the comment sheet. We're going to be talking about, you'll have a chance for giving us comments at the April meeting because you will have had a chance to read it. We'll have a group discussion. And then again, in May, the next big community event is the community implementation workshop. And that's where you all will have had your chance to highlight what are the key implementation actions that you're excited about. And then we'll open it up to the rest of the community to come in and say, yep, these are the ones, and they'll sort what's there, but they'll also be able to add what's missing. And all that input will go back into the final product. And we haven't even decided what the final product is going to look like. You all get to decide. It could be like we sent you the Westminster plan to look at. There's other formats. It could be website based. It could be a GIS story map. There's so many different ways that people are presenting master plans right now. So be thinking about that. But by all means, don't feel stressed about your chance to give us your ideas. You have 3 more months, to continue to provide input.
Yeah, I think that's the important thing that what Catherine said is that, you'll be receiving drafts of this, but I've told the staff that's working on this, expect to either continue to engage with community members or this committee or town staff to really understand, so that we can reflect that in this plan, both as issues and opportunities, and also discuss, some of our preliminary recommendations, understanding the context by which, a lot of your decisions are usually based on budget or history, but understanding that that will allow the people that are writing this, the content specialists, to really continue working on this as it is really a working paper, a working draft. So I also wrote the public services. So I know that Andy, Shannon, and Ted shared some of the snapshots of their particular sections, and you'll also review this. And so this may be of more interest to just to the town government and town staff. It's a survey of, you know, town facilities and town services, understanding, you know, some of the components of how Josh works off of them and how they are supportive of his work. But some of the ideas that are explored in this are particular to the Council on Aging. So understanding those issues and needs through both the discussions in the focus groups and the surveys. Hopefully I've, you know, at least reflected some of the ideas, and if there are additional ones, I'll expect, you know, some additional comments on that. But particular, you know, engaging with younger people, providing some sort of intergenerational activities when COVID is over, and understanding, you know, that there is an opportunity within the Council on Aging to expand those programming, the programming, and also, in addition to what Andy brought up with regard to senior van service, also addressing, you know, components related to the operations of that. What else? Celebrating the library. I'm hoping that Mary will review this section and provide even more input with regards to this. I think, you know, there was a lot of great stuff that was shared in the focus groups that I think really, you know, celebrate what you've been able to accomplish even in the pandemic with regards to some of the programming and services that the library continues to provide. So, but also know that, you know, there are opportunities for it to expand its programming and probably even expand the facility itself, or at least explore that. What else? As I mentioned earlier, it was the conversation that I took away from Chief Motter, as well as the hazard mitigation plan and the summary of findings from the community resilience building workshop. And that was specific to the firehouse facility at 93 Main. And understanding that there may have been conversations, but to continue exploring those conversations of possibly identifying that the highway department could be the next home of the fire department, and the highway department moving to where the salt shed is, as that has been, you know, shared in the plans, as well as in some of my interactions with some of the various literature that we're reviewing here. Yeah, and then, you know, just continuing to take advantage of, you know, the skill sets that the town administrator is providing, and understanding the volunteerism of the community, and know that even all of you who are working in this setting as members of this Resilient Master Plan Committee, you also serve on other committees. And so you're doing double duty, and you're taking those experiences from those other committees to this particular plan, draft plan. So that's, you know, just celebrating that and understanding that, trying to find a way to maybe even engage more and explore ideas like that. Another idea that was brought up and concept that was brought up was increased communication between town boards and commissions. Specifically, I know that Shannon alludes to this in her plan with regards to trying to engage with other groups to increase programming. And I think that there's an opportunity just in the general issue of both emergency, you know, in emergencies, as well as civic participation, and trying to get people engaged more in some of the activities of the community. And I think, yeah, and I think, you know, Josh probably will be reviewing this and saying, Ken, address this. And so I imagine that there is opportunity here to really continue to reflect the good work that the town government, the boards and commissions and committees are doing at the moment, but also try to find ways to maximize efficiency and understand the some of the limitations that may exist because of that.
Guys, I don't do enough cross-border communication.
Of course you do, but you have to keep doing it. Just like you said that Andy had to mention the stuff that you're already doing. You got to keep lifting it up.
Well, I remember when I came on in here, there was no communication. Someone would start a new position and no one would know about it and don't know who this person is. And
We have 5 or 6 communities that support our summer concert series outside of Blandford as well. That's in terms of regional involvement with culture that is emanating from here. They're the cultural councils of different neighboring towns.
Yeah, absolutely. And that was an example that when I spoke with the Mass Cultural Council, Cultural District Coordinator, he said that what he tells communities is to think about what is important and what type of programming and things would your community enjoy. Don't worry about attracting other communities. If you build it, they will come. And the White Church programming that you have right now is an example of that. It's valued by your community, but it's so wonderful that you have other communities coming to enjoy it as well, and looking forward to it every year.
I just want to say it out loud because for the recording, in case we refer back to it, I don't know if I guess we saved the chat too, but Josh is bringing up more opportunities for regional collaboration and ways to, and it makes me think again, in terms of like the final product, you know, there could be a piece on regional collaboration. You know, it doesn't have to be just the 9 chapters. Like the 9 chapters was for our staff to make sure we were thorough and we got all the stuff that's required for the state. But now, you know, you could start thinking, what are the town priorities? And there could be a whole piece on regional collaboration.
Yeah,
regional school. Yeah, go ahead.
In my chapter, something that came up about that was in Otis, they do a lot with the Knox Trail. And the Knox Trail goes through Blandford and is valued by you as well. So those types of partnerships would be nice to make connections with something already existing and then to bring it into your community too.
yeah, there's also, we talked about in our open space and recreation subgroup, the Foothills, what's the name of it, Catherine? I keep forgetting the name of this organization. The Foothills of Western Mass, or
oh, the Highland, not the Highland. What is the Patty's doing?
The Highland Foothills,
Man,
something like that. But
That
anyway,
sounds right.
it's the Highland Path or something. It's yeah.
this
Sorry.
large recreational walking, hiking connection. Oh, and I think Chips is on the committee on behalf of Blandford.
I've attended some programs. Yeah.
They're trying to leverage state resources to help advance this interconnection between from
Right.
far west comes through Blandford and goes further down. You know, and there's also the Hilltown Collaborative between, you know, the 6 towns that share the Gateway Regional School District. And, you know, each of us share this school district, and it's important for us to continue to somehow maintain that arrangement. You know, there's key things that happen. You know, if one community doesn't do well and hurts financially, and it impacts their shared and, you know, sustaining their part in the school district, it impacts other communities. So it's one of those things that, you know, if we can continue to strengthen our relationship and support our bordering, our partners and the other surrounding communities and their economic development initiatives, and because if they do well, you know, we do well. If we all do well, the school district does well. So thinking of sustainability through regional partnerships for the schools, I think, is critical as well.
That's great. Thank you, Josh. Yeah, I do address regional partnership, but since you made those comments, I'm going to refine this before I send it to you to address those particulars.
And I don't want to talk too much. I do have one comment in our overall process, and I like, how we've been able to not let anything get in our way and still continue to do community engagement virtually this way. We're still getting the work done. Unfortunately, though, however, I've been involved in these process where we were able to be in person. There's a lot of neat engagement activities that do take place if we were to, be in a room where there's breakout sessions and poster boards on the walls, and we can put sticky notes and cards and what we think for priorities, and it's supposed to help with the overall our feeling through this whole process, and we're not getting any of that. On the flip side, I'm so glad that everyone is still sticking it out and engaging in these meetings and doing what they can to continue to stay to keep this as a priority and get to the final version of what the master plan is going to be. So, I mean, I'm assuming there's other communities that are in the same boat doing their master plans via Zoom.
Everybody is this, yeah.
So, yeah, I mean, good job for doing
in our region, Chicopee, Palmer, East Long Meadow, you all, Amherst wrapped up. I mean, it's been a lot of people doing it this virtual way.
Yeah. But anyways, well, although we don't get to experience that part, at least, we're doing what we can and making the best out of it. So that's great.
But thank you for that comment. I mean, I think that sentiment is probably one that's shared by a lot of people working on master plans at the moment. It is difficult, and I think as much as we can celebrate, we try to, and maybe, and I don't know, like, I enjoy coming out to Blandford. I got to see Mary's home, when I picked up the surveys. But I love, coming out to the community, and I know that there are probably others on this call. Maybe we can at least stop by town hall and say hello, to ensure that, that we are, engaged and are trying to be as, what's the word? Yeah, for lack of a better term, engaged with you all through this process by participating in the ways we can safely. But yeah, I mean, it's
and maybe, May, if the community implementation workshop is at the end of May, there may be an opportunity, for outdoor. I know some communities had outdoor town meeting. Like, if there's a space we could do an outdoor portion of it, or something we can certainly talk about over the next 2 months. Talk with the Board of Health, see what the governor is allowing. But the way the vaccinations are going in Massachusetts, maybe by the end of May, it would be a possibility.
A footnote in the regional involvement, if we can add, perhaps, might be the regional, some sort of regional agricultural involvement. I mean, this farm does this farm does that, and also perhaps some way to encourage. We've mentioned cottage industries throughout Western Massachusetts. There might be some way to, again, a footnote to somehow encourage that with other communities.
Yeah, that's a great idea to explore. I haven't heard of that, but I think that's great. Thanks, Bob.
I was trying to look at, I learned a new phrase, agri-tourism. So I was trying to understand what that meant and where the money was in that to help with agricultural industries. So that is definitely something that came up in my chapter too. Also trying to inventory the barns in Blandford, and Massachusetts right now does not have a good barn program for help with funding compared to a lot of our other New England states, but we're always working on it and trying to figure it out. And the first step is understanding what you have. So that definitely came up in my chapter as well. And I just real quick have to shout out to Chips and the Blandford Historical Society for all of the amazing photographs he shared. Every time I would email him, do you have a picture of this? He'd send it back. And we've got some great photos that are available for use within this plan. Thank you.
Great. So I think if we're going to go to next steps, with regards to next steps, our next meeting is April. Oh, April 22nd. No, 15th. 15th. We have a weird 5 Thursdays in the month. So the 15th. And, you know, between now and Monday, Catherine and I will compile this form letter or form to send out to the committee. And I haven't yet decided if you should get the entire plan or the individual elements, which may make it easier for the content specialists as they, you know, will be addressing each individual item within their sections. But know that there probably will be, because these are probably larger files, either multiple emails or a Dropbox link, if not both. So just be prepared to receive that.
And also, just again, to reiterate, they're just Word documents. There's no illustrations. We're not going to include the photos, I don't think, Shannon. I think those are to be added later. So this is just the text. It's not going to look pretty. It's not going to be nicely formatted. It's just the content. So don't worry about the presentation, because that will all be later with our graphics people. This is just the content. Make sure that the facts are right. The recommendations are, you support them or you don't, but you are okay with them being there and they're comprehensive.
Yeah, it was good.
So thank you all so much for your time, and thanks everybody for doing a great job doing the research and writing the drafts. And thanks Josh and Mary, who's not here anymore, but Joanne, for keeping us all together. And I guess Joanne, you have to end the meeting.
Take care.
Okay. I end the meeting officially. Sorry. I guess Mary's got large shoes here because I'm having a hard time filling them. I guess I never really paid attention to what she does when she opens and closes. I'll pay attention next time.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good evening.
Bye.